handle video, right? You can just drop a whole video on it and kind of analyze stuff. So that'll be interesting, because I don't think a lot of the models handle that very well.
Yeah, I read it's really visual as well, that you can do anything like spatial, not just like videos and pictures, but like actual three-dimensional spatial vision. But I haven't really played with it yet in that sense.
Cool. Well, one of the things I will need a good model, I think, in a bit is I need to start creating these models of web pages to understand the structure of the web page and to create that sort of dynamically, so that my proxying, which you'll see in a second, is way more efficient, right? So I kind of need, I want to experiment with some models to analyze sites and then transform the websites into a sort of a meta structure of the websites in a way that I can do that programmatically, not without using the LLM. So,
I see. Yeah, fair enough.
So that would be, and then I'm going to start graphing the whole thing up. So finally, I'm going to start creating some cool graphs of a lot of this stuff.
What like kind of like, what else do we have in the chat? Dr. John has like that in Logseek.
Cool.
Like a big knowledge, like a big knowledge base, like Dr. John O'Hare.
Yeah, well, so I'm trying to I want to visualize the websites, right? It's like kind of a bit like what Mondi shared when we created that thing of the London Business School, right?
Right.
The interesting challenge, Mondi, is usually when people get there, they get stuck, right? Because it's like, cool, so it looks like funny pictures. Now what, right? So I in the past, when I had that in Jira, I spent a lot of time coming up with stretch strategies and path flow, so you can visualize the graphs in much more interesting ways and actually get meaning from the graphs, right? Because that's why I keep talking about the graph paths, right? Because then you get some sub graphs that are very meaningful.
I think it's where it's moving. Everybody wants to see the visual representation of stuff that comes out of the LLM. They don't want to just have plain text anymore.
Yeah. Well, because you start to talk about meaning, right? You talk about structures. Like if we present stuff in a visual way, then you start to understand the actual context, but also you start to see where the problem is in your data. I think a lot these days, I still go back to if you clean up the data before you get to the visualization, you have much more visualization capabilities, right? And your whole thing I've also learned was that your whole visualization pipeline has to be disposable. You have to be able to destroy all of it, rebuild it in the CI pipeline. And if you do that, then you can keep refactoring it. If you don't do that, your CI pipeline becomes a massive sort of your visualization becomes another pet that you have to maintain. It becomes really hard. And that's why most ELT projects, they are ridiculously slow because they can't refactor the whole thing, right? So they keep piling up more and more stuff into it without going, let's clean up the pipeline. So
okay, on that note then, I think there was something else. I think we don't have Nolan. Nolan has been working on something called Agent Ready Web, which I think I shared with you, Dennis. I think interesting kind of confluence of your ideas and John's ideas and Nolan's ideas. So maybe you can spend some time. But let's start with you. Maybe let's start with like maybe is it what 10 minutes, Dennis? Is that
cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me share. So I'm gonna walk you through things. I'm gonna show you a demo of this thing actually working, and then I'm going to walk you through that document, right, that I kind of dropped on the chat, which, by the way, I spent today 3 hours going to my business partners on it, right, and it was so cool because they actually were following it, right? So okay, so, I don't think I can I can share, yeah. Okay, so and all right, so you should be able to see actually Chrome window Firefox. Right, you guys can see this, right? Okay, so the workflow here is, again, like I go to text npm, and then I inject a new website on it, right? So this website does not exist in here, right? It's something I add in my proxy, and I'll go in a second about how it goes. And then actually, I'm just going to delete this cookie for now, so you can see that this is what it looks like normally, right? So you can see, right? You can browse it, you can see the stuff, right? So this is already going to my proxy, but I'm choosing not to do anything with it, right? So then what I can do is I can basically, using cookies to manipulate the values, I can basically show you that I can replace all the content, right? So what is happening is I'm replacing all of the content with X's here, right? So, and what it shows you that at the granularity level, I have every one of these pieces of elements is text that I can then replace and put it back together. And what's important, if you look here, you got, for example, a thing, then the link, there's some text, some bullet points, right? And so this is important because, again, for more complex websites also works, but in this particular example, right? What I'm going to now show you is actually a classification. These working. So this is not going to an LLM. The first version I did this was LLM. This is actually going to AWS Comprehend, which is actually more of an ML sort of engine, machine learning engine. And this is where it might be interesting to experiment with some of the agents and some of the stuff that, again, Ruben has been doing on creating customized versions of mini LLMs, right? Which is actually where I'm very interested. But I needed something that could classify the text based on a particular criteria, right? So what you can see now here is there's a bunch of text that is now sort of what's it called? Obfuscated. And what I should be able to do is, this is the one thing here, which is I can go from there, but I think I can also do it from here. Yeah, cool. So I can set the cookies, which you can see, right? So if I set the mode of -4, you will see less of this, right? So you can see there's one here, there's another one. So this is just the level of negativity that I want, right? And so this means that so the way you want to think about this is that the lower this number, that's my cutoff point, the more negative stuff I see, right? In this particular case, right? So that's sort of my benchmark here, right? So and it means that when I get this classified, if I get a 1, like for example here, I got a classification of 1, I can go to 0.5. That means anything that's classified 0.5 and above is also gets indexed. So you can see here, right? And then when I go to each of these, I'm able to, for each of those, I can then classify based on the negativity of the page, right? So you can see here. So again, what it means that if I increase my negativity threshold, right, then I'm going to get less of these. So now, for example, that is now showing, right, where I can now control my negative level from here, right, and that means that now that's going to be not displayed, right? So the interesting thing is how all these things put together, right, and the kind of briefings of this, right, and where the whole LLM stuff comes into play. Are there any questions so far?
You're controlling it from the browser, obviously.
Yeah, so this is a proxy. So I have a proxy. So yeah.
So I'm presuming this is just from a prototype point of view, but like, is it controlled purely on the browser? Because obviously console access people anyways will.
Oh, no. I was just flicking the switch, right? So the reason I was just using the console is because I wanted to just, so I'm giving instructions to my backend service through cookies, right? So I'm using cookies to control my settings. That's why I was just executing that, right? And that's because I don't enable that across sites. All right, so can you guys see this? So what's really cool about this is a 30-page document, right? That was created from the code, right? So this is literally created from the code. And I feel like when I'm looking at this, I feel like I'm going back in time for my last 6 months, because every major element here is almost like a couple of weeks of my tangents that I go to build the building blocks. But very quickly, what you guys see here is that I got the browser, which we're seeing. I got a Mailboxy interceptor. This runs on EC2 when I deploy it on an image. Then everything else is serverless. And then I have 2 moments of processing, request and response, and I have 3 serverless web services. I got my service that extracts the HTML. I got my semantic text service, and I have the same service that puts it back together. And then I cache the whole lot. So the workflow is fundamentally, you have a browser, I make a proxy request, right? It forwards to the upstream server, and then I get a response back, right? And then I get a transformed HTML in the end, right? So this is the flow. And then on the request pipeline, fundamentally looks like this. When I get the answer from the upstream server, I get the admin path. So this is the bit where is manual the proxy, it goes to a handler. If not, I handle it like this. So now the response is that I need to transform it. So if I have that cookie that I was just showing you, if it's off, then it goes through. But if that cookie, if it's there, then I cache everything. So that's quite cool. And then I apply transformation, which I'll show you next. I store the cache and restore back. And this is the transformation element. So here you guys can see that this is, for example, for this HTML, right? This is simple, but for this HTML, I create this dictionary. So you can see the dictionary has a P that's there, has a hash of that, and that would be a real hash. And then I have the text that is there. I then send this to my semantic classification service, which then, in this case, I'm using AWS Comprehend, but this could be LLMs. And this returns me, and I give a criteria. So I want to filter anything above 0.7. So in this case, if I go like this and I get results, I actually transform it. So this is actually reverse. So it's actually going to filter on this criteria. So probably normally we go below 0.7. But you could see that I go from HTML to a dictionary with a hash. I send the hashes to my engine. I get a classification back, and I then transform this. And then once I have that, once I have my output, I then ask for my HTML service to put it all together. So my HTML service gets the dictionary here, gets the hash mapping, and then creates that. So that's the whole flow in an essence, right? And by the way, if you guys want, there's each of these, there's really massive briefings that I've wrote. I wrote briefings before doing it, while doing it, after doing it, right? And then I go to the LLM and plug to write the code, and I bring it in, and then I write all the stuff. So, but I'm really, really happy with the architecture, and it's really, really solid, and it's all like serverless. And again, like this is just a great explanation of how everything fits together and puts it there.
Okay.
So if you think about it, like, well, the bit that, for example, we're going to do for the London Business School is a variation of this. And what we're going to do is when we look at classifying, the idea is to create graphs at this stage here. So instead of just getting a classification, right, of that we get, for example, from the in this case I'm using AWS Comprehend, which basically classifies based on this positive, negative, neutral, mixed, right? We will then create a graph that it's a lot more detailed, right? And then you can start to make decisions and connect the graph. But the fundamental bits will be the same. And the powerful of this architecture is that bit now works independently from the whole architecture. So I can now improve my engines regardless of my entire system doesn't know. It just knows that I'm getting better mappings on what to show and what not to show, and what to remove and what to let go.
So just to add, I think the intention is to map it to personas. It's like hyper-personalized content.
Yeah.
So this is about sentiment or positivity and negativity.
Correct.
But I guess what we're thinking about, like that same concept probably could be relevant to, like in the knowledge graph, that's what a student or alumni is interested in. What are the networking opportunities? How could we connect people who are looking for similar things?
Correct.
So
yeah. So in fact, you see here the three engines. You got AWS Comprehend, text hash. Text hash was a really great gotcha. So this, I create a hash based on the seed. So I get pseudo-random data that is repeatable. And it's funny, there's no accuracy, but I can use it without, so if I don't want to send data to here, I can actually, and I actually, this is quite a cool technique, if you guys want to get your heads around this. So that means that it's a way to create deterministic pseudo-random data for your environments, right? So it's ridiculously powerful. So that means that I always get the same data. It's just that it's wrong, but it's wrong in the same ways. And the coolest thing is that, for example, when I'm running these analysis, so for example, now my next project is, how do I display the information, right? Like, for example, like if you have some elements that I need to block, do I block the whole page? Do I block some components? Do I block some stuff? So now I'm going to think about, once I got classifications, what do I do with it? But so this allows me to have deterministic data all the time, because at that moment in time, I don't particularly care, if I'm getting the ratings right. I just care that I have enough meaningful data to be able to look at that problem significantly. So I'm kind of creating pseudo-random data. The trick I use is, in this case, the hash of the text that I'm looking, because the hash of the text then normalized to the scores is always going to be the same thing. So it's a pretty cool trick. So yeah, so guys, this is the document. There's lots of really cool stuff here. There's some nice workflows. And I have to say, I walked my business partners today on this document, and it was cool. Like, this is not even transformed to business speak, right? Which I'll do next. But it was really cool to be able to explain more in detail what's happening behind the scenes, and even like, mappings and stuff like that, and how everything fits together. So yeah, so that's.
Oh, we lost Dennis. That's it. Yeah. I'll retry.
I think it's the usual, I pressed the wrong button when I meant to stop sharing screen. We've all been there.
Hi guys. See,
Yeah.
Wrong UI, man. Like the button. This is actually a good example of a bad UI and technical debt. If you think about it, the biggest button that I should have when I'm sharing is stop sharing, is not hang out, right? So yeah, there you go. Good example of technical debt, right? Where this guy should be able to innovate there, but by now he's stuck, so they can't touch that bit. Yeah, so that's the workflows, right? So again, everything is open source. I showed you. The thing that I feel is also quite interesting is a lot of those components are really maturing, like the cache element that is there, the semantic text, the HTML blocks. So that's the multiple services that I got. And for example, I very quickly, because I have a template now, I created a service just for the AWS comprehend bit, right? So again, that was also ridiculously powerful to be able to very quickly deploy that service, right? And then use it at scale, using AWS. Like for example, when I run this, so that was showing is all running on Lambda functions, right? And that means that, for example, some of the Lambda functions are executed 50 times, 100 times in concurrent, right? Or some of them were executed like 3,000 times, right? As I browse, and some of them concurrent, but I didn't have to worry about it because the Lambda auto-scaled and brought it down, right? So that was quite cool from an architecture point of view.
Nice. Thanks, Dennis. Any thoughts from the community?
Yeah, I think the deterministic hashing is also a very cool immediate takeaway, right? Because we all know you can burn through a lot of credits testing, whether that's inference or other stuff. I've been testing on databases today, and it's cost a little bit. So yeah, I love the idea of the deterministic hashes.
Yeah, I see. What I find interesting is that a lot of the times when I develop, and I think in wordly maps, right? It's kind of like there's things that I says, I have a problem here that doesn't scale, but I'm not going to solve that until I get to that point. And if you allow yourself sometimes to do that, you end up solving the right problem at the right altitude. So actually adding the hashes was very easy, actually, because by the time I added, it was like, hold on, I have a random engine, I have an LLM engine, I have an AWS comprehend engine, but I don't want to use these ones because they cost me all the time. The random is annoying because it keeps moving stuff around from the screen. I was like, oh, hold on. I got the text. If I convert the text into a hash, right? And then I just literally out of that engine in half an hour, I had it done. And I was like, cool. And then the more I used it, the more I was like, this is actually a really powerful idea. Because it now means, like I said, I now, and in fact, even better, we now are already going to use it as the way to deploy to the customer. So the logic is that the first deployment that we do for customers is just the proxy and the deterministic pseudo-random. So it's almost like, because if you think about it, that the performance of that is the worst case scenario, right? So it's the best case scenario for the solution, right? Because that means that the bit on the architecture that will always take time, which is the classification, we basically making that zero, right? So because the creation of the mappings becomes zero. So what you're really looking at in that mode is the overhead of the entire platform, which is very important, because if there's any slowing there, you know that your own platform has problems before you even get to the LLM part or the classification element. So this is a way to, it's almost like I'm creating quasi mocking data, but it's deterministic mocking data. And my entire solution has no idea that that data is not real versus real, because ultimately it's just about displaying the information, right? And so the fact that the data is right or wrong doesn't matter when I'm developing, matters when I'm, for the customers who are using it. So I plug that at the end.
Yeah, I guess what I'm showing here is like, yeah, so Dinesh, obviously the story behind this goes is that Dinesh and I said, we're going to meet in London. So he said, let's meet at LBS Alumni Center. So we meet there. And so he said, what do we talk today? Then because I wanted to understand, obviously, Dinesh's work. And he said, well, there's so much information here. We've been trying to speak with the London Business School guys for our events, etc. Why don't we look at the information that they have and, show them what they're missing, maybe information they don't even know that exists, like research information, network information. So you can have a look at it and feel free to contribute to it. So this is the bit that we started off, obviously, as a code base. So this is public, open source university pitch, basically, under my bit. And we selected 10 random pages, and then I applied, obviously, Cloudflow and whatever, Agentic Flow, Dinesh's stuff, and created a visualization. There are some stuff over there. And obviously, there was a LinkedIn post that went out, and then Nolan reached out saying he was doing some stuff, which is actually this one. So he's working on something called Agent Ready Web. So the concept of Agent Ready Web is that, if I go back here, that how do you websites tell what is there? So because I was saying in a LinkedIn post, the right content at the right time for the right audience, right? That is a challenge problem. So you've been working on some stuff to say, how do you do so without relying on token usage and all of this stuff? Again, feel free to have a look at this. This is also public thing and open source at the moment. And he reached out. So as we were talking to it, and then we saw that, well, he had some stuff here, but he hadn't necessarily considered the knowledge graph and Dinesh's stuff. So he said, what if we mix what Dinesh has done, our stuff, and this one? What would happen? And that's what kind of came back into this stuff here, which is there is a branch for this as well, which is under here. So ARW Knowledge Graph Integration, that's the branch. And this is basically a Netlify depiction of what that means. So if I go back to the homepage here, this is effectively trying to say what could happen if Agent Ready Web integrates with knowledge graphs. So an organization's knowledge is graphed, and then basically from a publisher's point of view, they are already publishing what they want the outside world to know in a knowledge graph. And then you are allowing agents not to hit your website, because if you hit your website, denial of service, etc., but rather maybe publish the graph somewhere else. So when agents traffic come, agents basically get their information from where they need to without impacting human usage of the web. And these numbers are based on like the code base that we have done and some stuff, like some cost that I incurred for the 10 pages, and so on and so forth. And it has come up with some interesting kind of, I didn't notice this before, but it came up with some interesting visualizations here. It's like here, for example, it's come up with a graph looking at those. So they were, these are from the 10 pages. So different content, different themes were graphed. So there's a graph, which is there on my LinkedIn post somewhere. But I guess this is kind of showing an idea to say, if you are a persona who's a career changer, again, I've not tried this before, so I'm doing it now, how the interactions could be potentially. So, probably that traceability and so on and so forth. But yeah, it's just for fun. I wanted to add to this, but there we go.
But this is what's there, I think, is ridiculously powerful for a couple of things, which is I actually think that's the future of websites. I think every website in the medium term will have a set of static pages, which is what that is, right? That contains the content of the website, the structure of the website, what's there, right? So we can then consume it, right? In terms of mapping this out. And in a way, what I like about this is I'm going to be able to add this to websites where they like it or not, right? Because I'm on a proxy, right? I can basically imagine, for example, like you could have an LLM in your browser that consumes this, right? So the LLM, imagine you go to a page, imagine LLM in your browser going, or some requests going, hey, give me the page, not just the page contents, because I think the problem is if you just have the page content, you're missing a lot, right? But if you have the page content and the graphs and the semantic graphs of that page, that immediately gives you a lot of context. Immediately you can make a lot of decisions that are very powerful from a user of this, right? And you're right that this will speed up dramatically a lot of website usage, right? In terms of how it works. And then you can have that persona that you have there where you can then start to view the content from different personas' point of view.
Yeah.
Which is great.
That's the idea. This is all mock data, by the way. No, it's not mock data. The data is real from the 10 pages, but obviously it's not. It's for demonstration purposes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we are at to 6, I guess 7 now. So anyone else wants to showcase or any comments, thoughts before we move to the next one?
Anybody has Gemini experiences so far, or how is it working?
It's on my
You
to-do
did a
list.
little bit earlier.
Isabel?
Yeah, I was doing some A/B testing against Sonnet. But the answer is I have no idea how good it is yet, because what I discovered very quickly was exactly what I discovered with Gemini 2.5, which is that however good it is, it's a little bit awkward in its communication. So, when you're doing like planning work, Claude has always been very good at knowing how to communicate clearly and concisely in an easy way to understand. And that's my hypothesis in terms of why developers like Claude so much, because it's an easier co-worker, if that makes sense.
Dude, the other day, I do this thing in Claude where, and I have this, for example, this tool, this service that I go to a GitHub repo, and I said, grab the zip file and extract me these files, right? So I think there's a server that does something similar, but I needed a way to get like specific parts of my code base, right? So for example, when I have a bug these days, my workflow is I write a test that replicates the bug, and then I get a bunch of the code that I know is relevant for that bug. I drop it in Claude, I drop the test, and say, here's a test that replicates the problem, right? In the past, I would even give more introduction. These days, I just go, dude, look at the code, here's the test. Tell me what it is. And it just is freaking spot on. Like, he especially the thinking mode, he starts walking through the code, he thinks about it, find the solution, and sometimes finds a better solution. By the time he finishes, he gives me like the 3 lines of code that I need to change, right? I did the same thing to ChatGPT. It was not even in the same planet. It was like ChatGPT started to think about it. It's not that the answer was completely wrong, although in that case he was wrong on ChatGPT, but the quality of the analysis. Because remember that in this case, I know the code base really well, right? So there's nothing in. It's almost like the Claude did the analysis that I would do if I took the time to navigate through it, right? But from a cognitive load, it's so powerful to be able to say, here's a large chunk of code, here's my test, give me the fix, and then because I have so many unit tests around that project, I can make the change. And if my bug test fails, means the bug is fixed. And if I had no other tests failing, it means that I had no side effects. Yeah, like at the moment, I agree. Claude is just another level. So I should give Gemini a test drive. See.
Has anyone tried the new Grok?
With a K or with a Q?
Okay.
Who remembers? Yeah.
4.1.
And what's your experience, Rocky? Have you tried it?
I think it's leveled up.
Yeah. How do you stack up in comparison to the other options?
I don't know if they've kind of doing the freemium a bit better, because I did subscribe to Grok for a month, and then I dropped it. I thought the thinking was just too slow, and then you had the button, which was the quick answer, and then it just messed the whole thing up. But you can now access 4.1. I probably had a conversation maybe half the length of what you can get on Max plan for Claude. But It was so sharp, really good. And it
Use
seems
it
to sort
or-
How
of
would
tap
you
into the
compare it?
internet. What, but it's the previous version? The
How
speed
would
is,
you compare it for like planning and stuff for code?
I haven't used it
versus
for
open?
code yet. I haven't used it for code yet.
Mm.
I just thought I'd try it out today. I had a few problems. I put some information in. It just seems to do the RAG so smooth, so fast.
So on this topic, how do you
Gets the
guys,
relevant data so quickly.
so on this topic, how do you test your LLM usage over time, right? So once you got a solution, what techniques do you guys use to make sure that the new version of the LLMs, or even to compare different LLMs, right, in a deterministic way, right? What do you use for that? Or you don't?
The main way that I use there is basically proof of the pudding tests, and what my sort of 8 key performance indicators are, which is how long and how much do you have to type to get the answer I want.
Yeah, but these are not tests, right? That's you manually doing
They're
that.
kind of user tests. Then you get the information and how accurate is the information. How far you can go before it says you've hit a context window limit. You know, these are kind of the standard things, and the speed and just how fast you get a response, right?
Yeah, but I'm kind of saying in the project that you're using with an LLM, where at the moment you use the LLM to do certain tasks, how you guys unit test or integration test those answers to make sure that tomorrow is still working and the new models have nothing to do, because these guys change the models behind the scenes, right? Like even if they say they don't, right? Like even the APIs, some of the models get tweaked, right, behind the scenes. So how are you guys testing it? Do you have, I'm talking about unit test / integration test, like end-to-end tests, but how do you actually check that the LLMs are still behaving the way you expected? And when you want to look at like the Gemini, we should have data to say why it's better or worse, right?
But
We don't test.
Well, the test is for me like
Vibes.
you can't, vibes, and you can't really test on what I call capability, which is basically repeatable results, because like you say, it changes daily and in the background. I mean, I don't know if anyone notices it, but I definitely see Claude having good days and bad days
It
constantly.
does, yeah.
And you know, my kind of proof is you have to be disciplined, I suppose. And the same issue I had was with ChatGPT is that you kind of get stuck and you stay with the same model, and it does pull you in, right, where you just don't leave it for the whole day. But actually you should try and force yourself to actually just copy and paste your prompt and put it into the different models and see if the results change and see how things have changed and improved. And that's what I generally do. And also another thing that also, I don't know if anyone does it, but Jensen definitely does it, is take the output from one and put it in the other, right?
Yeah.
And let them criticize each other, because that's also quite a good sort of eval to do, find.
Yeah, but that's on manual, right? I'm saying for the stuff you're running.
That's all you need. That's all you need right now.
I feel like in production, if you run it off an enterprise endpoint, like if you run Google models, run them on GCP Vertex. If you run Anthropic models and some of the other open source stuff, run it on AWS.
Yeah, but
It's
how do
quite
you test it?
expensive.
That's my point. How do you test that? How do you know that? How do you validate the quality of what you're getting right now, and how do you validate that tomorrow is still the same thing? And especially once you ship something and it's being used by users, how do you make sure that it's not drifting, right?
But it's always drifting, and that's not what we're testing right now.
Yeah, but like, come on, like, you know, there's. I know some people use.
You know.
I'm just.
So
Okay.
are you talking about like solutions in production, or are you talking more about coding with LLMs? Or?
Well, look, for me, an LLM is a box, right? An LLM is like input and output, right? So wherever you use that in your solution, there's a workflow where you do some stuff, you send an LLM, then you get the output and you process it, right? Like fundamentally, it's a box, right? So, like for example, I'm using AWS Comprehend, right? So AWS Comprehend is machine learning, is not Gen AI, right? But with that, I now have very highly deterministic tests. Now, I know the for example, that if I go to AWS Comprehend, which is a machine learning algorithm, to say, give me the sentiment of this text, right? It's going to give me something around 0. Let's say positive 0.999555. So I can go, right, so the answer is above 0.99, right? I don't need to go to the decimal elements, but I know that the answer I'm going to get there is within this, right? I've done some stuff in the past with semantic knowledge graphs where I go, if I give you this text, you're going to give me these mappings, right? So my point is that I kind of want to have a deterministic way to verify and to validate, the quality of the data I get from the models, not just from the models I'm using, but also then say, can I use cheaper models? Can I use smaller models? Can I, is this model better than the other? My point is that if you don't have tests, you cannot have data to support that.
I mean, I guess we're talking more about eval sets here, really, right?
Yeah,
Eval
eval sets.
sets,
Yeah, I
right.
think people call it eval sets, but
Yeah,
you guys do that stuff.
The problem with
The
evals,
Medium article I found as we were talking, that employs some statistical modeling to try and detect drift. I think at the end of it, it comes down to is like if you maintain a database of every single response, and then you try and use some mechanism to judge how far it's drifting from where you intend it to be.
Yeah.
It's very hard to set a baseline for something like this because what is a good?
You can't.
You might have sent a different link.
Oh,
If you
that's still a Google Meet. Sorry.
no worries.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
one
I
sec.
mean, like if you've got a RAG chatbot on your website, for instance, and you're looking to answer customer questions, it's quite easy to build an eval set of here are the things that we care about, right? When I ask about this, it should return this product. When I after that, it should respond in this kind of way, right? So
Yeah,
those
I would argue that if you start running stuff in production, then you need to have deterministic results, right? You have to have an element, right, of deterministic in terms of the answers that we get, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it's relatively easy to build an eval set around something like that. It gets more difficult when you're when basically every input and output is going to be different, for instance with coding, right?
Oh yeah, no, I'm not talking about coding, right? I think coding, I think ooh, man, I only have Capability Limited on him. So I don't know his name, but the gentleman that was making the comment on evaluating, I agree, right? Like it's better where it's useful for us in the interaction, right? Like somewhere I do Claude, but I'm saying outside of coding, I say in your pipeline, because a lot of the stuff that we're putting LLMs in the pipelines, right? How do you do that, right? How do you, I'm curious to see if you guys were doing something on that space.
I don't think it's relevant for me at the moment because it's changing so much.
Yeah.
The thing about the drift, I very, very rarely experience any drift right now through Claude. Like once upon a time, I would get to the end and close to the end of the context window, and I'm on max constant, and it would just go sort of totally AWOL. Now it's right to the end, consistent, right? And you can ask it the question, which you basically asked it the first thing you asked it, and it picks it up straight away. So there isn't, because it's changing so much. I just think it's a futile effort to try and sort of measure this right now. It's like trying to stick a cup in a bloody torrent of water. You're not going to get a sort of reading out of it. Yeah.
Out of interest, are you using the Max plan or your API?
Yeah, I'm a constant max plan.
Okay.
Well, on Claude.
Yeah.
Has anyone used the $1,000 of drop-in airdrop from Cloud Code?
Is that Claude?
No, I
use
haven't
the Pro one.
So if you,
I think
if
it
you haven't, I
expired.
don't know if it is still there, but if you haven't, I've been trying to make. I've down this is what I mean. I'm going to show you if you haven't seen it. It's this one. It's on the web version. So if I, for example, share my screen here, I've been building as much as I can on this at the moment. So there you go. I'm down to $8.95. So I've used around $105.
Oh wow.
So basically all of this stuff, and it works. That's the beauty of it. I put the thing in here, connect to my GitHub repo, and it does the whole thing for me. like
check.
keeping
I'm
of
not sure.
swarms and everything. So all of this stuff has been built directly up on the web, basically.
Yeah, where do you got that 1,000 credits? How do you get that?
They airdropped it. If you
Huh?
have a max plan,
Yeah.
if you have a max plan, so if you go to, for example, here, I'm going to go to the other tab.
There was a deadline. Yesterday.
Mine's the 23rd. Yeah, sorry, I've got
Yeah, so
$1,000 and I've got to use it.
going to code here. Yeah.
Yeah.
And basically you can just do anything from here. Connect to GitHub, just build whatever you want. And
It's really
it just
good, yeah.
Yeah. On that note, I do want to share something. Basically, I've been trying to build. I put it on the chat, so I will socialize with you just to get some inputs, I guess, and help as well on some aspects. So I am going to move some of my windows across first, and then I will share my screen. I will move it here, and then this one here, and this one over here. Okay, there we go. And I will just share my screen. Or the tab rather, that'll be easier, I guess. So the first one I need to do is this one. So what I started is that I was trying to, I listened to a singer and I said, okay, and that singer recently passed away, and I was like, I wanted to translate, obviously clone the voice, and then what if we can have an AI model to train into a singer's voice, and then have that model actually sing lyrics which are translated in a different language. So obviously I use Assamese, which is my native language, and I want to do so in English. And obviously lots of disclaimer here. Again, this is all open source, so just the idea is to explore here. That's what this is, education. And I have to learn how to get the information from YouTube. So for example, that particular song is on YouTube. It's a video. So I kind of use YTDLT, the package, and then extracted that. So if I were to show you what that song looks like, if I move across to this code space here, so hopefully you can see my code space now.
Yeah.
And if I say, so that's the original, it converted the YouTube video into a WAV file. And if I briefly play it for maybe a few seconds, just to give you an idea what it is, you can hear it, right? Can you hear the sound? You can briefly hear, I think, right? So I'm going to just
briefly a woman.
So it's got vocals and it's got obviously music. So first and foremost, and I was impressed with the first step, and Claude obviously planned the whole thing for me. It's separated into vocals. So if I now play the extracted vocals for you, and I'll just briefly play just to give you an idea, it's pretty neat in terms of how it did it. So if I now play this, I think it's loading up. Hopefully it will play. We'll give another few seconds. Okay, something happened. It was playing, right? And then I have I'm not going to play the other one, which is basically the non-vocal, so the music only. Then I took this one and I used something called RVC, right? Which is retrieval, I forget the full term, but if I go to my README file, that information is in there. So a retrieval vector, I think it's a training mechanism for to get a model. So it used something called Hubert implementation. It's a transformer implementation, and it did. I mean, I tried, and I'll welcome some help here to better understand how to use Colab and I guess Hugging Face. I tried using them, but I really struggled. I paid for the GPUs. They don't really seem to I couldn't get them to work. So I finally spent like yesterday on my Mac M1 chip here, which is literally slow. I tried training it, and I did have a model at the end of it. And that model is basically went to 300 iterations of training. And that is finally, obviously, a model file, which will be somewhere here. I can't find it, but that's the model file. So, and then I've been trying to basically test it. So, but where I'm currently is that it gives a robotic sound. So it's not really like I thought it would be a bit more like similar to the original voice. So probably it's either the way I'm training it or something else. it's robotic. But the idea was that I also did the following: is I wanted to do the following. So I use Gemini, as I generally would, to translate it in. I didn't apply rhyming. I could apply rhyming better, but the idea is that once I have the voice trained, then I would do post mixing of the voice, basically model voice and the lyrics, and make it sing, and then mix it with the music, because it'll have the voice should be trained on the characteristics of the original song, so you should know the timing sequence, etc. So that's where I am. I'm basically playing. If anyone has interest in this, or you kind of curious and you know a little bit better way of doing it, I would just welcome any input. So I think thank you actually. I think Peter, right, for your I think you gave some comments on the other chat. So yeah, that's what I've been up to.
Have you tried running these on like a serverless? How big is that? Could these run on a serverless environment?
Not much. It's like the file itself, 42 MB, not long at all, not big at all. It's a small file.
Yeah, it'll be quite cool, because I think once you can run on a serverless environment, means you can actually package it up, right? And then it'd be interesting to see that if the architecture can run on a serverless environment where the only thing that's missing is the model, then you have a nice scalable flow, right? Because you almost decouple. See what I mean? You decouple the trying to figure out better ways to use it from the model that actually uses it. And then as you make the model better, you should make the output better.
So if I show you like this, how it sounds currently, it's not impressive. So I'm giving an early warning, but let me show you the for 30 seconds of original, like I took a clip of it, right? So if so that is the like a clip, right? But if I now play the output clip, which is this one, I mean, this is the thing, it's very robotic and so it gets a timbre of the sound, but I just couldn't get rid of that hissing sound that comes about it. So it's got a timbre right. Basically, the tonal noise of the voice has got it correct, but it's this robotic bit which I yeah. But I'll maybe catch up with you, Linus, if you want to show me like how to do this decoupling later on.
Yeah, let's sync up. Like so I already have a project on my GitHub repo that makes it easy to do that, right? So that's one of the things I saw ages ago, which is I have a project that as soon as you clone it and you run a command on it, you would basically, it's as long as you have the AWS credentials, you will ship straight away a fully blown AWS Lambda function that has just some admin endpoints, but it's already fully wired up on the CI pipeline.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how I start everything, right? Everything I do is like it's always productionized, and then there's always little curveballs, but I like to have those problems sooner rather than later, right? So every time I build a service, I make sure that I can run it there, because I know if I can run it there, I already have an enterprise solution straight away, because I already have something that would scale up and down really, really nicely.
Got it.
And by the way, I don't use Terraform, right? I've done a lot of Terraform. I have a lot of scars. I could use CloudFormation. I didn't use CloudFormation. I wrote my OS, I call OSBot AWS. I have a whole API that makes AWS a lot more sane to use. So yeah, let's sync up. I'll happily help you with that.
Okay, I've got one more thing, but then I guess over to the community. Anyone else? Ben's offer, Yuger, Chris, anything from anything else in this chat today?
Yeah, just a small news that Codex Max 5.1 has been released.
Oh, okay. Is it available in the Pro plan then? Is it available in the Pro plan as well?
It's ChatGPT Plus.
Oh yeah, okay.
So I've got a $20 subscription, and it's quite good. So I make the switch. Sometimes Claude Code fails. I switch over to Codex and.
So actually, on the new Claude Code, are you using that mode that it's already quite sandboxed, isn't it? The new Claude Code Web, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like Flow-Nexus. It's basically Flow-Nexus. What Rube had put is basically much more kind of. It's that actually.
Yeah, I want to experiment at that, because the idea of giving these things access to all my repos is kind of like not really something I want to do.
No, but yeah, but you can create basically any sample. Just create a blank repo and then just give it an idea.
Yeah,
Ask it to do it. Yeah, it does it pretty well.
cool. So, fair.
Yeah. Now, also regarding that, you can select to GitHub permission. You can specify exactly which one you want or don't want to give it access to from your repositories of the Cloud Code Web.
Okay.
There is a unique thing you must know though, that the session IDs are linked. So if I show you, because I struggle from this one because it doesn't, if you ask it to create a branch and work, don't give it a branch name because it'll add a session ID at the end. The way it tracks the work with a GitHub repo and the session is to that ID at the end of the branch. So you will see some strange long numbers at the end of every branch. That's because Cloud Code Web is basically.
Right. I saw you can also only work on the main branch. Is that correct? Like you can't tell it go to future
No.
branch and work from that. It has to go to the main branch and do its work on main. Creating
Yeah, you may be right actually. But you could tell it in the prompt that check out from this branch. Look in the repository, check from, and create a new branch from this branch, and then work. Maybe we're trying it.
I had a question regarding Cloud Code Web.
Yeah.
The group did mention he was able to initialize Cloudflow in it. So
Yes,
I have full control of what it does and see it.
correct.
But you be a recommendation when working with Cloud Code Web to initialize form agents, all that.
I have a tip. I tried. I just copy pasted the README file from Ruben into Cloud Web, and it did everything perfectly.
Which README?
The Ruben's repo, Cloudflow.
So
Okay.
and I, for example, do it things like this. So that's front end. I basically copy pasted. Maybe Benz, you want to show what you did? For me, I just kind of say use Cloudflow at the initial instruction. I was trying to figure out something I can show you, but maybe this is where I started probably. So if I go here, for example, this is a project. This is a language prototyping app I was building. So it did all of it. But if I go to the very top on the prompt, that's a lot of code it built. Well, I didn't think it's so long, but I'm almost there.
By the way, I just got my credits there, but do they finish in 3 days? That sucks, man.
No, it's been continuing. It told me as well. But it was meant to have finished yesterday, but it's still there for me.
No, they said it finished on the 22nd.
No,
Okay.
it said for most people it said it finished on the 18th, but
Yeah.
Oh, really?
yes, extended, yeah.
Yeah.
So here, for example, I said, Assamese diaspora community are outside, lots of immigration, blah, blah, blah. Here's Duolingo. Use Research Swarm and basically to research what is feasible and look at the Servon AI, etc., and go on. So you could say Cloudflow as well or whatever. So you basically therefore installs Research Swarm here. There you go.
But at this stage, you haven't given access to any repo, right?
No, I just created a blank repo, basically.
So you create a blank repo that you then go there. Yeah, so now, okay, that is working on that guy. Okay, got it.
Yeah, and then, sorry, Benz, yeah.
Have you opened the default next to your repo on the left? You've got the default environment.
Yeah. No, I did. I won't show you the detail, but you can put your environment variables there. Like Servon AI, you see, I said Servon AI, right? Use Servon AI. So you can specify the environment variables in there. Basically, you can create your own one. Actually, I want to show you like one of this project's output. Okay, I'll show you how it came out as finally. So if I go to 1 second, I am just trying to remember where it is. It's been a while actually. Okay.
And somewhere you can open up the connections, the permissions.
Do you want to show? Where?
Somewhere in the environment settings.
Yeah.
If you just create a new environment, maybe, and need a drop down.
Okay, I'll do that. You mean this one? Yeah. Okay, I get it. Oh yeah. So you can just put an API key, what it is.
And network access
It needs to be full.
Cool.
This is so that you can access so the cloud can talk to the wider internet, basically. You just set it to full. It's not the other way
That's
around.
it, yeah.
Yeah, and so this project actually translated to so it came up. I mean, it's me playing around, right? So it translated into this, right? So you can do a start learning for free, and it has voice integration with Azure. So I kind of created that.
Namaskar.
So it just did that. So I was pretty impressed, with what I could create just with an idea in here, in this one.
Cool.
Right, so let's park it at the moment. Okay. In that note, I guess we got 2 more minutes. I wanted to just share this with you, which is this one. Moving it here and then sharing this tab. So this is happening now on the 5th to the 7th of December. So Google have confirmed, I think Kimoon, who's in our chat, by the way, he's part of the London chapter. He has raised a request for 100 frictionless access accounts with GPU access. Yeah, on the hackathon. They'll activate it a week in advance of the hackathon. So I think we're still waiting for it to be confirmed. So Google is supporting in terms of infrastructure.
Is this at their headquarters? Is this in
No,
Google?
this is all remote. So we'll run it at that. So the idea is that we want to come with hackathon in a box concept through this process. So how do you conduct a global hackathon by being remote? There were some there was an interesting bit that was shared in one of the channels here. It's like a room system. So you go from one room to another, you go shows and tells, another thing. So people are still, the guys are still, we're talking and building, but the challenge is obviously have a look at it. It's about content discovery. So yeah, that's it.
Can I ask you guys, is the GPU price, how does that work? Is that they donating GPU hours or?
Yeah, that's completely. So it's basically, I think it's frictionless. So I think it's maybe subject to fair usage. I don't know the specifics, but it's through Cloud Run is what I understand. So we access it via Cloud Run.
Okay.
I will also learn as part of the process.
So are we a one team as London?
We may actually do that. Why not? Or why not?
Yeah, let's do that.
Or I mean, can have one or more teams. But I mean, we have a fair number of access points. So why not? And the idea here is share, learn, build, and earn. By the way, right? So this is not a competition in the traditional sense. This is basically create something on value, and whoever contributes, there will be a DAO or something similar to a DAO. So if that commercializes, then whoever contributes gets royalty throughout, basically on an ongoing basis.
So what do you mean by DAO?
So decentralized autonomous organization. So the whole blockchain concept, but we may not need a blockchain, but the concept is that we track real contributions from real people. And if that contribution is meaningful at a code level or whatever, then that is treated as such. And if it is commercialized, so TV5 have seeded this with 5K. I think that the French chapter obviously brought this in, and then they may want to take and commercialize it if it gets commercialized, and whoever is part of it benefits as well. But this one, Global Hackathon Agent Token. This is the concept, and how revenue sharing works is this one. Well, Roop, basically, if I quoted this just before this meeting, this page, maybe on Lovable at that moment.
I guess what's interesting is that when we mean the project, where does it run, right? So for example, what I like about some of the serverless functions I'm doing, I can already see them as being a service that gets provided, right? Because that once it's there, is now all you need to do is add billing, add monitoring, then it's a service that gets provided, right? And it adds value, right? As long as somebody, wants to use the commodity of that. So this is cool. So it's 4/5. Yeah, let's do something.
I would imagine they're looking for something like a scalable microservice, right? Because they're gonna have lots of small edge scenarios of users, and you have a small model for every user that's out there.
Yeah,
right?
what we should do, man? We should do a visualization for permission changes and the blast radius, and then sell that to Cloudflare, because they kind of need that, right?
Cloudflare had a nice week.
Man, every time I see one of those, I think if this was an attack, that thing would have been blown to pieces.
I saw a conspiracy theory yesterday evening that because a lot of Cloudflare is hosted on GCP, like a Google Cloud platform, that Google took down some of the larger competitors just before Gemini 3 launch so they could prepare the infrastructure for Gemini 3, like lots of people coming on the servers. And as a result, it knocked out Cloudflare.
Yeah,
I don't know if
I
that's
think the
true or
CTO
not.
was basically saying that. I think it's even worse. I think the CTO says, "Oh, we changed the permission, and then Claude made a side effect, and then that blew up."
Yeah.
Right. The one I liked was Claude. And if you saw, Claude had this thing where at 12 o'clock there's like, "Oh, we're having problems." Like, no shit, Sherlock, right? At 12:30, yeah, we're still having problems investigating. At 1 o'clock, I'm going, we still have problems investigating. At 1:30, I'm going, oh, the problem is the third party. I'm like, seriously? It took you an hour and a half to determine that the problem was the third party? But yeah, it just shows how fragile the whole thing is. So maybe we should do that. Make a configuration, digital twin. So these guys.
Did you
can
see
actually-
that? Did you see that Andrew NG? He got his team to make an equivalent Cloudflare in the time that it was down.
There you go.
Go to his LinkedIn page. He tells everyone about it.
There you go. I know. Good stuff. All right, guys.
All right.
Thank you all.
All right.
Well,
Take
Thanks,
it
and
easy.
all right.
Cheers, guys. Good
Bye-bye.
to see you.
Bye.
Bye.
Good to see you. Bye.